Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Rui, for the opportunity, and thank you for the whole team. Second of all, I'm really sorry for being the one right before lunch, and I'll try to be brief, but let's see how this goes. Today, what I'm going to talk about is a little different than what the others are bringing. I'm going to talk about my career. I've been in the market for over 23 years, 4. Yes, I started it in the late 1900s, and I can consider myself as a designer, the new design and learn design of what design was before what design is today. However, there is a thing that is very different or is similar throughout all these 20 years, these 2 decades of work, is that the foundations of design are the same, which is humans, right? And we change a lot throughout that. But before I start talking, I want to understand exactly who I'm talking to. So please raise your hands if you're Gen X, Generation X. Okay. Millennial. Ooh. Okay. Gen Z. Okay. Gen Alpha. You're Gen Alpha. So, being very human-centered here, why did I ask? Because depending on how I present my path, it will make you understand exactly who you are and where you want to become, okay? So I started a long time ago I did business school. Actually, I did accounting school. Didn't work out because I have dyscalculia. And then I did business school that didn't work out very well because I have dyscalculia. And then I did industrial design school, and I found myself, right? I graduated with industrial design and based in product, where I fell in love deeply for all the processes. However, because I touched the business world before, I was like, how can I bring these two together? And funny enough, a little bit before I graduated, a company called IDEO, and I think all of you know what I'm talking about, and the Stanford University came together and published a book and all the process of design thinking. However, design thinking came from the Illinois Institute of Technology Institute of Design, but let's not go there. When I found out about IDEO and being in Brazil, I had a hard time actually getting access to their materials and documents and books, right? A little later on in life, I found out that one of the universities were doing a master's in design strategy, and which was actually just marketing MBA, and I wasn't still happy about it. I opened my design agency in Brazil, and I was doing design thinking processes, but I had to present them as branding innovation for corporate. Even though I worked a lot with my clients, I had the opportunity later on to visit the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, where I got invited to do my master's there. So I closed my company, sold my car, broke up with my boyfriend, and poof, went. While I was at the Illinois Institute of Technology, I learned more in 6 months than I learned in my whole design career till then, right? And it was an amazing lab. I was very grateful later on that I was invited to be an adjunct professor at the Illinois Institute of Technology, where I was teaching digital service design for the engineering students. I found a job in Chicago with a company called Acta that is very similar to IDEO, but different from IDEO. They actually deployed things, solutions, not just came to the concept. That company quickly got acquired by Salesforce, and then within Salesforce, I got transferred to London. I grew up inside Salesforce, and I'm proud to say that I was one of the few that was founding the design thinking process and services within Salesforce. So if you see any, I would say, learning certificates that happen today around UX, I was part of that team that brought that content. In Salesforce as well, I was invited to be the design community ambassador for UK, EMEA, and so on. I didn't have people under me, I had countries, and we were working to establish the governance of deliverables of design across the world. After that, Oracle called me and asked me if I would like to be a director of product under the hospitality pillar that they have there, where I worked with property system management. And then later on, I got invited by Wood Mackenzie to be their vice president of design and product. Wood Mackenzie got acquired by an American company, and after 20 years of work, I was tired. I was really tired, and I think the most part of my tiredness is because common sense is not that common. And more you grow in your career, more you see that common sense is not that common. So I was that junior designer, angry why they're not understanding and why they're not buying what I need to do, to the point that I decided to become a leader so I could actually narrate and justify and fight for the designers' needs across the company. And that just continued on to go until I became an executive. After a little sabbatical, I opened my own consulting company, and today what I do is I consult to C-suite level and board members, meaning the heads in the Olympus, the guys that are very far from what whoever else in the company is doing, to bring sense and common sense to what is not that common. And the importance of self-identification in the corporate life. And I discovered that very early on in life, because since I'm neurodivergent, and I was only diagnosed later in life, after I was 30-something, with dyslexia and dyscalculia, and then after my 40s with ADHD. There's someone there. With ADHD, I didn't realize that throughout my life, I had to justify my way in, or my existence, or the way that I thought, not because I was who I was, but because people were the way they were. And when we come to the self-identification, and I'll say this is different from millennials and Gen X to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, because Gen Z and Gen Alpha, you guys grew up with social media. You grew up with a scenario that you are always mirroring yourself in the existence of others, right? You know more about other people's successes and whatever they post than we did in our generation. So for me, it was very easy to focus on myself and be like, I'm still Paula. However crazy I was, however the ideas that I had, but I needed to be myself. I didn't have any mentors. There were no women in executive or leadership, in design, anywhere in the world that I could say, like, I want to be like her. I needed to find my own path, right? And what does self-identification mean in a professional context? I was a goth when I was a teenager. And then I became a metalhead. And then I became a designer. And then I became a consultant. And then I became an executive. Did Paula change throughout these years? No, I'm still the metalhead that I was before. However, I learned how to adapt my identification to depending of the audience that I had. How less of a noise can I be to be heard and to be understood? And I think what André said about the narratives there is very big, right? You need to know how to communicate with your stakeholders, but who are you? Do I want to be like Joe, the vice president? Do I want to be and start replying and behaving like Martha, the other vice president? Or I want to be Paula, the vice president? I am myself, and I continue to be myself. However, I had to learn to be agreeable to what other people were expecting of me. Challenges and pressures of fitting into corporate culture while maintaining personal authenticity. I'm Brazilian. When I moved to Chicago, I had a manager one day, and I said, oh, I cannot go to the meeting this afternoon because I have to go do something. He was like, I don't care. Why are you telling me this? If you cannot come, just don't come. For me, there was a slap on the face, because as a Brazilian, someone does something like that to you, you go like, that's extremely rude. But for them, it was reality. It was like every day how they communicate. And then I learned that I didn't have to keep telling people what I was doing all the time. I was still being Brazilian, but I had to find the right moments in how to be Brazilian. So people wouldn't say like, Paula is annoying, Paula is this, Paula is that. I'm not saying you should change yourself. You should start as a UX researcher, observing your surroundings, reading the room, and adapting yourself in a way that you can communicate and be agreeable, right? And there are two ways of doing this. One is, for example, I chose this path and it worked well with me in a way that, how do they talk? Do they make a lot of jokes? I'm gonna make jokes too. Are they very serious? So I'm not gonna make that amount of jokes. They don't like touching, they don't like looking. I started observing behaviors and trying to adapt myself a little here and there. But then the second path, right, is when I know people, for example, I know this lady that she uses burgundy every day. And she's the burgundy lady and everybody knows her because of her visual identity, right? However, I became Paula, the one that only talks when it's necessary, right, with a funny accent. And sometimes I bring the Brazilians like, I'm sorry, I'm Brazilian, so I'm just gonna say something here on the table. And people laugh, and I can still be myself, but in a way that I'm not being controversial. You know why I'm saying that? Because the people that I have to deal with, they're boomers, right? They are boomers, or early Gen X, who kind of behave like boomers. And that's why I had to do that. You guys are in a situation today that leadership is changing. Most of leadership that you have today is late Gen X, early millennials, right? And they are more agreeable to self-identity, they are more agreeable with ideas, and so on. But again, who are you in that sea of people that you need to be reminded for? How aligning personal values with professional roles leads to long-term fulfillment? I've always been true to myself, and I never sold myself cheap. In a way that, Paula, can you do this for us? And we're actually gonna put your name there at the end of the book. We cannot pay you right now, but you're gonna get, no. Paula, can you, no. My price is this. This is what I do. I have a value. I declined working for Philip Morris. I declined working for Monsanto because I have principles. I quit my job because after we got acquired, things changed in leadership in a way that I wasn't fine to be signing behaviors, you know, like and being exposed like that. So the only way that you're completely fulfilled is when you can go to bed at night and sleep, knowing that you did the right thing, right? Growth, resilience, and vision. How personal branding evolves over time. Again, I was this crazy teenager that suddenly is using a blazer on a stage, right? And I think it evolves in time because, and this is a reality that got me, I think it was the beginning of the year. And so when I was in a conference and I was talking, and then this girl came to me and she said, Paula, when did you figure out that you were successful? And it hit me that I didn't think that I was successful, but for them, I was. And then I had people looking at me as an inspiration for whatever they wanted to become. And the branding evolves in a way that you were like, I have to be responsible as well to the community around me, not only in my small role or big role. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter if you are a junior designer, the way that you present yourself, the way that you speak, you inspire others, even though that you don't know about it. People are looking at you, people are listening to you. The role is resilience in overcoming challenges and shaping your career identity. One thing that I'm gonna tell to everyone is imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the most common sentiment a human being can have. If you know anyone that doesn't have imposter syndrome, run. This person is dangerous, right? For many reasons. Does anybody heard about Dunning-Kruger effect syndrome? Yeah? So for those that don't know what Dunning-Kruger effect is the metric that Dunning and Kruger, true psychiatrists, they came is to how you evaluate how bad at your job you are, or how good at your job, like how efficient you are, or how non-efficient you are. The majority of people that are highly efficient, they are very successful and very good at what they do. They rate themselves very low in a way that I don't think I do good enough. I'm afraid of presenting. I'm afraid that someone is going to tell me something bad. And the people that think that they're great at what they do, right, they're actually not that great at what they do. And that is very dangerous when it comes to shaping your career identity, right? They know how to sell themselves, but they don't actually know how to do the job. Meanwhile, the others do their job very well, but they don't know how to sell themselves. Is it because, oh, people are gonna ask questions and I don't know how to answer? People will find out that I don't know everything. People will be, there'll be a confrontation moment, and then you get anxious and you get jumpy when you start receiving feedback, no, and you start interrupting, right? So there's the challenge there is like, how can you make an exercise of self-awareness that helps you understand that if you are the person in the room talking about something, you're actually the expert. And if people are asking questions, it's because they are interested in knowing what you do and what you want to progress with it. And this whole self-awareness exercise was really hard for me, especially being neurodivergent, because you create this identity of yourself personally and the identity that you have to represent the world with, but the two of them start like fighting with each other. And the self-awareness exercise actually brought me to an understanding of who I am be truly and how I can be the same person everywhere. And I didn't have to shift myself or morph myself anymore in front of people. The power of personal branding, understanding the role of personal branding in corporate success. When we talk about that, it means that, let's just say you go to a wedding and you're wearing a bikini. You're gonna get noticed. You're gonna be laughed at. You're gonna be called. You're gonna be asked to leave. And that's the same in the corporate world, right? If you have a sea of people that behave the same, a bunch of like minions, and then you come as something completely different, the impact that you're gonna make is not as great as you expected. People have biases. People are racist, people are xenophobic, people are sexist. Even though they say they are not, there is a lot of a conscious bias that people bring with them. And you are putting yourself and being successful to that. Oh, the client didn't like me. Why was that? You know, like, did you show up yourself in a way that the client would be agreeable and so on? So even though you don't want to hurt your self-identity, you have to be aware that other people, so it's really not about you, it's about others, right? And when it comes to careers, like, how can I be part of the bigger picture? Strategies for aligning your personal brand with the corporate role. For me, it was very natural because I was always someone that fought a lot about things. I was that woodpecker going to leadership all the time, to the point that they said, okay, you want to deal with this? You get promoted and you deal with this, because I don't want to deal with this anymore. I don't want to hear you knocking on my door anymore. And I think, like, from the before, standing on your principles is something really big, but it depends on who you want to be. If you see yourself today, you go like, are you a designer that knows research? Or are you a UX designer that knows UI? Or are you a researcher that knows UX? Who are you? Oh, I am a designer that knows front end, or I'm a front end developer that knows design. You have to label yourself and you know, like, find who you are, and that's who you're going to start becoming to display, and that it becomes really natural. People will come to you like flies to the light. They will start looking at you exactly how you think of yourself. How building a strong brand helps navigate challenges and opportunities in a fast-change landscape. I never thought that I would be Paula Falco, known in several design communities and talked in several design communities, asked to be their mentor and so on, right? When you come to the fast-changing landscape, you need to adapt yourself to needs. And For me, the biggest challenge was to understand Gen Z in a way that people will come to me with very similar questions and how to help them, that in my generation, I could never even think about asking those questions to someone that was more senior than I was. What is my value? What am I doing here? I should be promoted already. Why am I paying everything that it was asked. And then I learned a lot about that. And when you learn how to adapt with these other generations, you learn also how to communicate with the other ones up there. You have the people controlling the money and you have people executing, and how you're going to communicate differently with all this. So the fast changing landscape is, who are you? So for the juniors, I'm a mentor. For the seniors, I'm an expert. So they don't even think that I have the communication with the juniors. The juniors, they don't know that I'm talking to the leaders. So this is what you have to be. You have to adapt yourself in the way that the narrative goes. Practical steps for personal growth, and I think I'm going to speed this up. Anyways, did you guys ever look at SWOT exercise? Yeah, so normally when marketing or CX and so on, they come to do provisions of scenarios, they do SWOT in companies, but a really good self-aware exercise is doing SWOT for yourself. What are your strengths? What do I do that is better than anyone else I work with? What do I know that other people don't? What are the links and experiences that I have that other people never had before? And that goes from the very personal way of yourself. I am an immigrant. I grew up with a single mom or in a multiple house. My parents are gay. Whatever experience that you had in your life, it's part of that strength because it made you be different, see different. You know, like here on the strengths, the most strong people that I've seen putting things here, transgender people. They've been through a lot. And they have a vision and an experience of things that no cis person will ever have. And this is their strength. This is where they come. But they're still marginalized, unfortunately. But it's for you to see exactly what is that great about you that you don't know. Your weaknesses. What I don't like doing. What I think that I should be doing better. What is something that is pulling me back? I am afraid of presenting. I'm afraid of talking to others. I'm too much of an introvert. I'm too shy. I'm neurodivergent. I don't know Figma. Whatever it is that you think is your weakness, right? Write it down. The threats. Threats are things that you cannot control. Meanwhile, the weaknesses are things that you can control. Things that are coming from you and you can fix. But the threats are things that you cannot. So the market is changing. I might lose my job. I may not have jobs for me. I'm just a graphic designer. AI is coming. I don't have market. These are the threats, right? Like wars are coming. The world will explode. The sun will take all the satellites out. There will be no digital world. Whatever is the threat, right? Put it down. And then the opportunities that can come from all the strengths and weaknesses and threats. A good way of doing this exercise is going to your family, your partner, your friends, and be like, I'm gonna give you 15 minutes of free feedback without saying anything back to you. What are my biggest strengths? And you're gonna find out that you are so amazing in so many ways that you never thought about. Dunning-Kruger syndrome. You are everything you are, but you didn't really acknowledge that. Then it comes the weaknesses. You're gonna figure out that you screw up in a lot of ways and you have a lot to work on, but it's also a place for growth. Your threats, you're gonna figure out that there is not as much worry that you should have about the external world than you thought you would. You overthink less. And then the opportunities, how can I grow from it? So there was a little text here. You're gonna share the slides later, Hui? Yeah, so the text will be on the slides later, but it can give you a little bit of a path on how to get there. But before I go on the Q&A, I wanted to say that even though today my career is and my life is very different from the reality of 20 years ago of Paula. Paula is still the same. And when we talk about brand and we talk about ourselves, I only realized after I was 40 how important it is for you to be self-aware of who you are and how you should fight for that name. There are billions of designers around the world, but there's only you, one. You may know the same tools, but the critical thinking that you bring to the table is different than anybody else's. The way that you learn things is different than anybody else's. The way that you process information is different than anybody else's. And you should use that in your favor. If you have fears, if you have traumas, right? You should work around those and understand where they're coming from. To be like, I'm more than that. These are things that I can control. When you receive feedback that you didn't like, it's not about how the feedback was given, it's about how you reacted to it. And then people will start realizing and seeing your behavior towards things. And they will follow you. They will look at you and be like, I want to hire that person by the way they behave with things, how they collaborate, how they narrate, how they go beyond what is expected, how they figure out that problem that nobody could see before. So I know that the market is not easy right now, but remember, it's about how you react to the market and not how the market reacts to you. And I'm pretty sure you're going to find success in your life. Doesn't matter if you are Gen X, Gen Z, millennial. But that's it for me. Thank you very much.